like to welcome you to Coffee with Christy and Crew. I'm Christy Grossman. I'm the owner of Ops Boss Coaching, and we have some of our coaches on the call today. I know we have some clients on the call today, and we have some other people who are experiencing overwhelm and burnout, I'm guessing. So I'm going to give it one more minute before we get started. While we're doing that, give you our upcoming calendar. We still have our spring promo for group coaching running through the end of this month. So if you're interested in that, go to our website and check that out, because that is a wonderful place to find support when you're feeling overwhelmed. And it's also a place to find strategies for how to get out of the overwhelm. If you are in the Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky area, anywhere driving distance to Cincinnati, Lexington, any of that, come and say hi to me. I will be speaking at the Mega Agent Summit there on the 25th. And John Maxwell is the keynote speaker, who is, I'm so excited to hear him. So come introduce yourself. Early bird prices expire June 1 for the Ops Boss Leader Retreat, which is our once a year annual event for operations people only. And that takes place in October. So get your tickets for that. And our book blink, which is a 15-minute call where one of our coaches gives you her highlights and takeaways from a book, because maybe you're overwhelmed and don't have time to read the whole book. You can come on June 14th, and Hannah Perky is going to be talking about the book Redeeming Your Time. And then last couple ones, send your agents and your brokerage owners to the Locker Room Nation Breakthrough event in Orlando in August. Stephanie Brackett is going to be one of the keynote speakers. If any of you guys have taken her Systems Are Sexy class, she's doing kind of a version of Fix This Next, and it's going to be awesome. We have 2 brand new classes coming out this summer. Stay tuned for that, and let's jump into our topic. So if you have not been with us for Coffee with Christy and Crew, the way this started was we have a team of coaches, and in our Slack channel, we often are masterminding and asking each other for help and telling each other, here's what I'm dealing with. Have you been through this? Here's what works for me. Here's what doesn't work for me. And we thought, instead of doing that in a closed group, that we would just open up once a month and chat with you guys, kind of do a live chat of how we chat through things. So that you can share the knowledge as well. So I'm going to put a poll up, or actually, Brooke, can you launch the poll, or can only I launch the poll? And I just want to know, are you experiencing overwhelm or burnout yourself, and that's why you're here? Are you just in overwhelm stage? Are you full on burnout? Or I'm here because I'm a leader on my team and I want to learn how to help my team. So go ahead and vote in that. I can see the votes coming in. Okay, let's go ahead and end the poll. And it looks like about half of you are not in overwhelm and you're here to learn how to help your team. I love that. We talked a lot about that on our coaches call this morning. And then a third of you, the other half of you, are in overwhelm, and some of you are in full on burnout. Okay, so let's introduce our 2 coaches that I invited here today. So Steph, you want to introduce yourself, and then Sam, introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Stephanie Brackett. I am the VP of Operations for DRO Investments, which is a large conglomerate of companies. Notably, he owns 14 market centers with KW, so that's how I'm still tied to real estate. And I am a coach with Ops Boss Coaching and have been since 2018 or 19, Christy. I can't remember.
18, I don't know.
I think it's 18. I think it's 18, yeah, 2018.
I can't do math today. 5 years.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Steph's background is, prior to that, she led a team that did about 700 units a year on traditional real estate team. Awesome. Sam, introduce yourself.
My name is Sam Stokes, and I am the owner and CEO of Rethink Leverage, which is a TC services company up here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've been in real estate since 2018, and I've been a coach for a little over a year now with Ops Boss.
Awesome. So let's talk about, what are you guys seeing? What are you experiencing personally? Steph and Sam, what are you seeing with your clients? Sam is a group coach. Stephanie is our top one-on-one coach. What kind of things are you seeing in terms of overwhelm and burnout?
A lot of people getting multiple jobs back because everybody's cutting back. That's a big stress factor, that people are just taking on way more than what they were used to doing because teams are cutting back. They're shaving off positions altogether. They're shaving off duties. Everything's kind of coming back to people. So I think that's probably a theme that's happening across the country, is that people are getting jobs back that they had leveraged off at some point and thought that they were never going to have to do again.
Tell me in the chat, are any of you experiencing that? Because I'm seeing that with clients as well. Anything else you want to add, Sam? What other kind of things have you experienced, or are you seeing clients experience?
I'm seeing definitely the same thing that Steph has been seeing. I'm also noticing that things might not be leveraged back to you in the best way that a leader should be giving it back. So I think we should definitely talk about that later on. What's the best way to hand something back to one of your employees?
Okay, awesome, good. And you guys are welcome to jump in and make this a conversation and add to this in the chat. So let's start kind of at the beginning and maybe define terms. And I know we have some different perspectives on that I don't think there's any right or wrong here, but just so that we're all on the same page. And let's talk about, like, what is overwhelm? What's burnout? How do you distinguish between the two? Whoever, either Sam or Steph, I'll let you guys each just jump in when you're ready.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, burnout is actually a syndrome that is a result from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So there's a giant difference between just being stressed and being burnt out. Being stressed is, oh, I'm feeling pressure. I have a lot of things on my plate. I've got too much to do. But it's that in a chronic state that hasn't been managed that leads to burnout. And so generally stress comes with an end date. Hey, when I get through this, I won't be stressed anymore. When I get past this thing that's stressing me, I'll be okay. Burnout is, there's no end in sight for that thing. I don't see an end to the stress I'm feeling. There's no end for me. And that's when you get the burnout. So it's that chronic stress that's not being managed.
Okay, so short-term, long-term, kind of. Sam, you had a little bit of a different perspective, I think.
Yeah, so I found there's a couple different definitions of burnout, and the one that resonated with me the most is to exhaust one's resources trying to achieve an unrealistic expectation imposed by yourself or society. So I think there's two sides of the coin here, things that are being imposed on us and what are we doing mentally to impose that stress on ourselves?
Yeah, which I think are really good questions. And I think the purpose of today is we want to stretch your thinking both as people experiencing burnout or overwhelm and as people who you may be leading people or have agents on your team who are in that, to give you some tools, because what we've observed a little bit in our industry is a little bit of hopelessness of I can't do anything about this. What am I supposed to do? Like, the market has changed and I have to do all the things. And we want to empower you to actually take charge and do what you can do to make things change for yourself or to help others change. So let's talk about signs. What are signs if you are on a team, you're a leader on a team or a partner, a teammate? What would you be noticing to notice whether people are dealing with burnout or whether they're dealing with overwhelm? Either one, they kind of go together.
I think seeing a lot of errors in their work where they didn't have them before.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, people who normally don't make a lot of mistakes, starting to make a lot of mistakes. And I think that would be a symptom of overwhelm. And then when they don't care whether they're making mistakes anymore, that's when you see they've moved into burnout, right? They've given up hope. What else? What are other signs that you guys are seeing? And Steph and Sam and other coaches, fill it, and anybody who wants to participate in this, it's a conversation.
I think apathy, like when you start seeing that they don't care anymore, that's when you know that they're totally burnt out. They're just have complete apathy for anything that's going on. They're just like, oh, all right, made a mistake. Okay. Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they've given up.
Yep. They're completely disengaged and apathetic about everything.
Mm-hmm. I looked up the scientific symptoms of each because burnout is a medically recognized diagnosis now as of 2018. It was not before that, shockingly. So you can kind of see as I read these off how it'll morph from overwhelm into burnout. And so the signs and symptoms of overwhelm are you're unhappy, you're losing sleep, you're stressed, you're anxious, you're unable to overcome difficulties, and you're losing confidence in yourself. When you have morphed into burnout, there's tons of self-doubt, feeling hopeless, detachment, loss of motivation. And then they call it the 3 Ps, which I don't know why they call it the 3 Ps now that I think about it, because they don't start with P. Exhaustion, cynicism, inefficacy, and there's actual physical symptoms that go along with burnout, which are aches and pains, low energy, and changes in appetite. So, and I had all those, so.
Love it. Don't love the burnout. Love the clarity though. Okay, so let's talk about what are some of the causes of burnout. Well, let me dial back. Let me add one more thing. What I noticed as someone who's kind of experienced this in my previous role on a real estate team, I noticed myself not being myself anymore. That's how I knew that I had passed over from overwhelm into burnout, because I'm normally a positive person. I'm a can-do person. My number one strength on Strength Finders is empathy. And I was just the nastiest person to be around, and that I was not being who I intended to be anymore, and I didn't care. That's how I could recognize it. So if you notice people around you you just get that sense of like, they're just not themselves anymore. Something has changed. That could be another sign. Okay, so causes of burnout. What do you guys see among your clients, with yourselves? What are some of the causes of burnout?
In my personal opinion, a lot of it is self-imposed deadlines and self-imposed, you think you can get way more done than you can actually get done. And then you beat yourself up when you can't get it all done. So you create these things and you have all these self-imposed deadlines, and no one else has the deadline. It's your deadline. It's no one else's deadline. And then every day you get to the end of the day and you're like, look at all the crap I didn't get done. Well, you got to reevaluate what it is. Like, you have so many things to do. You've got to be super clear on what's important to do and what's not important to do. And you've got to be able to let stuff go. Sometimes it's just not all going to get done. It's just not. And I have found,
how many times do we put things in our CRM or on our wherever we're keeping our tasks, and we schedule them on specific dates, or we put them on our calendar with deadlines, and no one else gave the deadline, but you gave it to yourself
all the time.
And it wasn't actually a time-sensitive project. It was just that you gave yourself this deadline to get it done, and then you didn't accomplish it. And now I feel like I'm losing every day.
I learned that lesson when we merged our two teams. You know, I had a to-doist list of like 97 things I needed to get done. And every day I'm bumping them one more day, one more day, one more day. Sorry, Alexa's going off. Every day I'm bumping them one more day. And my boss is like, why? Who told you those were due then? Those aren't due. Like, pull all the dates off and then let's chat about what's the most important thing. Because every day, I mean, I come to him every day. I'm like, dude, I am like so overwhelmed. I can't get all this stuff done. There's just too much to do. And he's like, who told you it needed to be done? So a lot of times it is totally, he opened my eyes to the fact that I was the one imposing those deadlines on myself. No one else was expecting it. And what happens when you do that is your to-do list becomes no longer a reminder of actual real things that you made a commitment to someone else to do, because they're buried in this giant list of all the stuff that you're not going to get to today. And so that's when you stop following up with people. When you told them you would hey, I'll get back to you next Thursday. Well, it pops up next Thursday and it's buried in 97 other things. And you forget the one thing you were supposed to do, get back to that person on Thursday.
So that was actually Strength Finders did a study on I think it was the top 5 causes of burnout, and one of them was unreasonable time pressure. So that's what you just kind of addressed. And sometimes that unreasonable time pressure comes from outside of us, because a rainmaker, for example, doesn't know how long something takes. We don't tell them how long it takes, and their expectation is that, oh, that'll just take you 5 minutes, right? So if we are leaders and we are delegating out, are we asking the people around us, how long do you need to take that? When can you get that done, versus us imposing guidelines on them? What are the other, Sarah had one in here, constant unclear expectations from managers and team leads. I think we see that a lot. And that actually came up sort of 2, maybe 3 of the top 5. Let me give you the top 5 that Strength Finders came up with. Unfair treatment at work, unmanageable workload, unclear communication from managers, lack of manager support, and unreasonable time pressure. Those were the top 5 causes of burnout. So if we are leaders on our team, we want to look through those and figure out where can we ease things for the people around us? Are we evaluating workloads with people, not for people, right? Are we communicating expectations clearly? Are we providing support? All of that kind of stuff. And if we're the ones experiencing burnout, flip side, are we communicating back? Steph has actually, have any of you taken the, what's the name of the assessment from Strength Finders that's around burnout? Is it just called the Burnout Assessment?
Yeah, I don't think it was an assessment. It was just a article that they published based on a study that they had done on Strength Finders. So
oh yeah, it was the study.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So Brooke, will you post that link? I think it's in my notes. What do you have in there? And I'm not sure what the Google Drive, the shared doc, but there should be a link to the Clifton Strengths Burnout Assessment Guide. That's the name of it. So tell us
the
about
study
that.
and assessment that's linked right here.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Steph, you want to tell us about that guide? Because this is where I want to kind of move into what some solutions are.
Yeah. So how many of you guys have actually taken the Strengths Finders? Like a few? Okay. So, on those of you who haven't, those of you who have, on Strengths Finders, it breaks all of your 43 strengths, or however many there are, 34 strengths, into 4 categories. And the way it measures what category you fit in is what the majority of your traits fit into one of 4. I'm an executing. Most of my strengths, 3 of my 5 are in the executing category.
Let's
Okay.
Can we drop those 4, what the 4 categories are in the guide?
Yeah, Brooke, they're executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. Okay.
So you may have, if you haven't taken Strengths Finder, you may have strengths in multiple areas, but typically the majority of your strengths will fall into one of those 4 areas.
Right. So basically what the study did was they said, okay, let's look at everybody who has the executing tendencies in their Strengths Finder. So the majority of their strengths fall into the executing domain. And when workers with dominant executing themes feel overwhelmed or frustrated by their job, they're more likely than others to take action that give them some sense of accomplishment. So this is how what the study showed is how people naturally dealt with stress and overwhelm based on their strengths. So the executing people, they are more like they need action, they need control and accomplishment in order to feel less stress and burnout. So they tend to get back to work as quickly as possible or find other ways to motivate themselves to avoid delays. Okay, those were their natural tendencies.
So let's slow down for a second, because what that makes me think about is how many of you have team owners, rainmakers, or maybe you are a team owner or rainmaker. You probably have a lot of executing strengths. That's typically what we see. People who are action oriented, like move forward. So when they feel stressed, their natural instinct is to execute more. And what does that do to the people around you who are also stressed is you're pushing, and now you're pushing harder. And I think some of you are on the receiving end of that. And the reality is that is doing the exact opposite. It's not relieving their stress as well as other things that they could do. So go ahead, Steph.
Yeah, so the two things that most of them said they did was they get back to work as quickly as possible, or they exercise or engage in physical activity, because that's something they can check a box off, right? I got it done. I went and I worked out. Boom. Those are the two things that most of them do. What the study found was that if they got back to work as fast as possible, it only reduced their burnout symptoms by about 15%. Okay. However, if they stopped to take time to think through the situation that they were in and just spent some thinking time, that reduced their stress by 48%. So more than 3 times if they would slow down and think about what they're doing instead of just get right back to work. Okay, those that wanted to do physical activity, that reduced their stress by 20%. But if they would look at their situation and try and find something positive in it, it would reduce their stress by 46%. So fascinating about your instinctual coping strategies versus what your actual recommended are. They're polar opposite.
So if you're that person, I'm thinking like if you're experiencing that or someone on your team is experiencing that, I've been through that before. And I just think if I just work harder and get more done, I'm going to feel better. And I'm just going to keep working late and get all the things done. What I might want to do instead is take some time and go for a walk and think about what things do I actually have to get done, or what were my wins yesterday? Or I might want to start my day with gratitudes, right? So that I'm starting in a different space. Now that would not come naturally to an executor, right? But if I'm being purposeful, then those activities would actually lower my stress level.
Yep.
All right, go ahead. Let's do another example.
Okay, I'm going to do the one that's the most impactful probably for the operations one, and that's the people that are in the relationship building, right? These are your people. These are the love on you type people, okay? So in the relationship building, workers with dominant relationship building themes tend to reframe their work stress from the perspective of others. So when they're stressed, they're like, oh gosh, I wonder how so-and-so's feeling about this, or I wonder what they would think about this. They're more likely to consider how others they work for would feel about the same situation, and to think about how their work affects others and how to seek help from others, right? So they're
So how
always
many of you are those people where you're like so
external.
stressed, but you're like, but I have to get it done because if I don't, then so-and-so can't do their thing. And I have to like stress myself out so everyone around me will have what they need, right? Okay,
Yep.
Go ahead.
So the natural instinctual tendencies for that are to think about how others I work with might feel about the same situation, or think about how my work affects others. That's my natural tendencies. The recommended tendencies, and if you think about how others might feel about the same situation, the study shows that is 35% likely, it's likely to cause 35% more stress than to reduce any of your stress at all. It's going to stress you out 35% worse than if you did nothing. What the fascinating thing is if you think about how you approached similar situations before, if you use that coping strategy instead. So if you say, okay, this is what's happening, how did I deal with this previously? That decreases your stress level by 43%. So you go from an increase of 35, if you're trying to think about how others might feel about the situation, to a decrease of 43. It's a 78% swing in your level of dealing with burnout.
So if you can draw on your past history to know, I faced something like this before, I'm here today and I came through it. Let me think about what my things were, what worked, what didn't work, and let me try that. That's actually going to decrease my stress. But if I start thinking about the people I'm letting down or how they're going to feel, I'm increasing my stress.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the other one on that one was, if you think about how your work affects other, that only decreases your stress level by about 13%. But if you use relaxation and mindfulness exercises, that decreases it by 33%. So if you're a people person and you have high empathy and all those things that fit into this category, this relationship building domain, you actually really need to take some personal time and do some affirmations or some meditation or some yoga or some prayer. That will vastly decrease your level of burnout versus all the thoughts about other people, which is what you naturally are going to gravitate towards. You're going to naturally think of others.
And all of these are going to feel really uncomfortable. It's choosing to do the things we know will help us versus just doing what comes naturally, because these are all going to feel unnatural. If you're overwhelmed and you're at your desk, the thought of getting up to take a 15-minute walk outside and breathe some fresh air feels like it's going to stress you out, because what if somebody needs something and that's 15 minutes out of my day and I'm already overwhelmed. But if you can push through that uncomfortable to schedule the 15-minute walk after lunch or at 2 o'clock or whatever, it will actually decrease your stress, but it's going to initially feel a little bit more stressful, I think. Awesome. Okay. Did you want to give any other examples of the other two or
I can do them I'll just run through them really quick. So the influencing domain, most people wanted to spend time with friends and family outside of work or think about how my work contributes to my future goals. That was their natural tendency. What works better for those people is to go do exercise, engage in physical activity, or think about how you approach similar situations before. Both of those are better coping strategies than your natural ones. And then the last one is in the strategic thinking domain. They naturally stop and take time to think through their situation and take more breaks throughout the workday to try and relax. The recommended coping strategies are to think about your current situation as a challenge to find a way to succeed. Like, look at it as a challenge instead of just, oh, here's my current situation. Okay, you got to think of it as a challenge and figure out how to win. And then taking more breaks, what's actually better is spend time with family and friends. Like, actually get with people, not take time, don't go introspective, right? That one's, if you're in that tendency, if you're in the
because a strategic thinker is often thinking internally and go external, which feels uncomfortable.
You need to go be with people. And it's funny because I have a coaching client who is executing and strategic thinking are her top two. And she was definitely in burnout, definitely. And I shared this study with her. And the next day, her husband's grandma needed to be taken care of because someone that was supposed to be taking care of her was ill and couldn't do it. And after that day, she came back to me. She's like, you have no idea what that did for me. Like, just spending time with her, I would have never thought to do it, but spending time with, I had the best day ever, because she would have taken some breaks to relax and stopped to think about her situation and executed and done all these things. But like, going and spending time with someone wasn't her natural tendency, but it helped 1,000 times over.
So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. We've all been experimenting. The coaches have been experimenting with that right along with you, because we're in the trenches just like you guys are. Now, Sam, I'm going to ask you if you would share the name of the book and the author in case people want to get the book. But Sam has kind of is in the midst of recovering from burnout, I guess is how we want to put it. And Sam was looking for things not to learn about burnout, because she knew all about burnout, but how do we break through to the other side? And so she came across a book that was actually science-based, which I found really interesting because a lot of the things aren't. So why don't you share some of your takeaways from that, Sam? Or maybe
Sure.
tell
So
us
I
a
think,
little about your story if you want.
yeah. Brooke threw it in the chat. The name of the book is called Burnout to Breakthrough. It looks like this. And the subtitle is Building Resilience to Refuel, Recharge, and Reclaim What Matters. So This book is all about resilience and recharging, and I was most interested in healing from burnout, like Christy said. A little bit of my journey is I was on a team for a long time, and I was giving, and it caught up to me. And I talk about that a lot of times with our group coaching clients. Is you're doing something out of the goodness of your heart for a long time because you want to do it, and unbeknownst to you, that level of work is one day going to be expected of you when you don't want to really perform at that level anymore. I don't want to work till 8 p.m., but they've seen me do it so much in the past that now they're expecting me to work to 8 p.m. if I have to. So that is the hurdle I ran into. Is I was being expected to perform at this super high level, which I used to enjoy doing. I'll admit, I used to work on weekends, after hours. I loved it. But there came a point where I was reevaluating what's important to me in life, and living to work was not it. I was wanting to switch to working to live. So that is where my journey started, where I realized I was burnt out. I was a walking textbook for burnout. I was lacking motivation. I was lacking confidence. I was having trouble sleeping. I was feeling resentful towards working. I was so tense even that my massage therapist was worried about me, and he told me the tense level of my muscles in my back are making me look crooked. And I didn't really enjoy him saying that to me. So I was like, holy crap, like, these mental symptoms are creeping in, the physical symptoms are creeping in. I remember when I was going through the thick of where I was at my peak of burnout, I would come home and my mind would just be spiraling all night long about what I have to do the next day and these huge projects I have to get done, and how am I going to do it, and who's going to support me, and the team's running lean now, so we have less people. And my body was just, my shoulders felt like they were up to my ears. And I think a lot of us can relate to that piece. I've heard a few
Well, I
people
want
say
to
that
pause
before.
you for a minute here. Thank you for sharing all of that, because I know it was really
Mhm.
personal. And
Mhm.
those of you, because a lot of you said you came on the call as leaders, you're not experiencing burnout. And I will tell you, probably a lot of that time, that if I had walked into your office, Sam, I would have had probably no idea that you were experiencing that, because you have a self-expectation of showing up at a really high level all the time. So if you are a leader on this call listening to this, I want you to make sure you're connecting with the people on your team, and you're checking in with them, and you're asking them, like, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you today? Oh, tell me more about that. What would make it go from an 8 to a 10, or a 3 to a 7, or whatever it is? We talked about the wheel of life today on our team call. If you don't know what that is, you can just look it up. It's an exercise you can do with your team just to check in and see where people are. And that's why one-on-ones are also really important, because you need to understand where people are. And when you're in overwhelm or burnout, you're probably not going to immediately raise your hand and go to the leader on your team to say, I'm in overwhelm or burnout and I can't do this, I need your help. That's sort of the last thing most of us will do. So I just wanted to pause there for a second. So, okay, so now we know where you came from. Tell us a little bit about what your takeaways were along the way with the book.
Sure. I do want to mention, while we're on that topic, there was a piece of leadership feedback I overheard back in the day. Two people were having a conversation. I overheard it, and it really stuck with me. And the person was being asked what her favorite part or favorite attribute of her favorite boss or her last boss was. And she said that her boss would ask her, what can I do today to support you? Or what's something I can take off your plate today? And I thought that was so powerful, because a lot of times leaders are just giving, and never offering to help you out or support you in any way. So I think it's nice to hear, hey, as a leader, how can I help you? What can I take off your plate today so that you have a more successful day or less stressful day? So just wanted to mention that, because it popped up in my head.
I love that. That's a partnership that we talk about a lot here at Ops Boss. I love that.
Yeah. So first, the book definitely validated everything I was feeling, which was nice because sometimes you just feel alone and like you're crazy and you'll get over it eventually. And it was nice to be validated. And the second thing it did that really stuck out to me was it touches on how to lead through burnout, how to prevent burnout amongst your employees, and how to overcome it. In the book, I believe it's chapter 2, is all about leadership and analyzing the things that you're doing within your company that could possibly lead to burning out your employees, and questions to ask yourself to analyze the things that are going on so that you can at least be aware. I think awareness is definitely the first step. I'm just going to kind of read through my main takeaway notes. It's so hard to wrap up how much I learned in this. So I'm just going to kind of read them off. So the first thing she said that really stuck out to me was that resilience is energy management. So the voices in our heads are going to either give us energy or they're going to deplete us of energy. And every day we have to listen to the voices in our head. And every day we have to determine what we can give on that specific day. We shouldn't get caught up in the, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. Oh my gosh, this huge project. No, all you have to do is the best that you can do today, and small steps are enough. And I've been really, really working on this one piece, going from being a high achiever all the time. I'm at 100 all the time. There's no such thing as downtime because I'm filling it with other things to do. I think that was a huge thing that led me to my burnout. So just knowing that, Christy and I were talking about it earlier, on the days where I'm feeling gung-ho, I'm caffeined up, I want to work till 8 p.m., I'm going to do that because I want to. But if I come into work the next day and I'm like, all I can give is the bare minimum of my critical task, which I think Steph will talk about later, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to be okay with that.
I
During
just paused
times
for
like,
a second. We were
oh, go
talking
ahead.
about before the call. I was thinking about, do any of you guys drink daiquiris or margaritas? I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one. Okay. Yeah. Think about a blender. When you turn the blender on, you go 1, 2, 3, like it has speeds that goes up to its high speed. You don't just hit 5 and let it run for 3 straight days. If you did, it would burn out. Right. But yet we expect our bodies to be able to do, and our minds to be able to do the same thing. So what Sam's strategy is, like, do the different speeds on the different days. Where's Brandy? She's not on camera right now. Brandy, I know you totally get this. Brandy and I both have had to deal with concussions. So we've had to learn, right? Traumatic brain injury, right? You learn on those days where I've got it all together and I'm physically, mentally, all the things good, I do the extra. And then I counterbalance on the days when I'm not. And I know that I did the best that I can. It's not that you're not achieving, you're just not high achieving in every single moment. So I thought that was really important takeaway. Thank you, Sam. Keep going.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to touch on was seeking help from each other, especially in the market that we're in today. A lot of our teams are running lean. We have less people to do more work, and it's hard, and we should be helping each other. And simply having a conversation about how you're feeling and talking about solutions rather than dwelling helps a lot, especially with that mindset piece. And how can we help each other through this? We don't have to own all of the answers ourselves, and that's why we seek help from each other. From a leadership perspective, it's holding a space to have these conversations and then supporting each other as we work through it. So now is a time for listening, empathy, transparency, humility, give and take, and boundaries. And I think as a leadership, or in a leadership role, a lot of the times we're like, okay, we can get through this, but they never come down to our level. You know, a lot of rainmakers are out of production and they're just kind of the puppet masters, and we're the ones doing all the work. And it's nice to have a leader come down to our level. Like, listen, I know this market sucks, for the lack of a better word, and we're going to get through this together, and we're going to suffer together, and we're going to support each other throughout. And I'm going to hold a safe space for you to talk about these things, and we'll work through it. I think if I would have had that in my last role, that would have gotten me through a lot longer then I lasted. So
Jump on
Go ahead.
and add to that. And Sam, this is not in direction to your specific situation. It's just a
Mhm.
comment. I want to encourage you that Rainmakers, despite whether we think they're working hard or we think they're not working hard, they're working hard. They are stressed and overwhelmed and burnt out also, just like many of the operations people on the team. And you may not see that because a lot of times it's behind the scenes. And so one of our purposes behind this call was to empower those conversations two ways that Sam's just talking about. If they had come to me and had this, and we want to encourage both operations and sales to have those conversations together, because when we're partnering and solving problems, we can solve them farther, we can go farther faster together than if we're in silos, each dealing with our own challenges. So I just wanted to add on top of that.
yeah. And I know we're all about action here. So she did talk about how do we get from burnout to breakthrough. And she talks about how there's a piece in the middle called breakaway. So burnout is like the jail cell that we're trapped in. We can't get out. We don't see any hope. Breakaway is kind of acknowledging what's going on, asking questions around why is it this way? Does it have to be this way? And then by doing that, you're moving into breakthrough. So an example that I thought of was if one of your TCs is feeling burnt out and they're stuck in this jail cell and we don't know why. And for example, they're still in spreadsheets, they're not using any automation. Obviously, you're going to feel burnt out as you move into the summer market, for example. So the types of questions you should be asking are, does this add value? Is there a better way to do this? Maybe the person's not the right fit, or they have other things on their plate that shouldn't be there, that's stopping them from being the best TC that they could be. Whatever it may be in your scenario, I think asking those questions, one thing that really resonated with me on my past team when we had a new DOO join us is she one time asked me, I don't remember what I was doing, but she was like, why is this on your plate? And I sat there and I thought to myself, I don't know. It just, that's always how it's been. And I never thought twice about it because when I was hired on, I was given that task and I just carried it from then on out. So having leadership come to me and ask me, what about this falls on your plate and why is it that way? And should it be someone else? And is it adding value to your life and your role? That was a critical question for me. And it had me sit back and think, what else am I doing that doesn't really make sense that we have people that it should be on their plate naturally? It's not like you're trying to get rid of everything or trying to leverage it back. However, you do want the things you're doing every day to make sense and be meaningful to you.
And I think
So that's good.
Leaders who are on the team, if you have not gone back and had everyone rewrite their current job descriptions, then clarity on the 20% of the role, what's the 20% that gives 80% of the results, and how do I measure success in that 20%, and have that conversation with each person on your team, leader and person on team, because we're never going to be a 10 out of 10 at every single thing that we do, right? We're not perfect people. We want to be a 10 out of 10 in the 20% of our role. And that's where most of our time should be. And that's where most of our results should be. But I would encourage you guys, keep an activity log too. Are there things that I'm doing that don't have meaning anymore? Are there things that I'm doing that don't need to be done, or don't need to be done until the market changes, or don't need to be done till we hire somebody? And take those off your plate, because I think a lot of us are spending time in our 80% and not in our 20%. And then that's when we feel the stress because we can't do the 20% well.
Mm-hmm. I really like what Bethany said in the chat.
Yeah, revisiting the question, what is important right now? Sometimes what was important or critical 3 months ago is no longer realistic. Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Iris had a great comment too, and I think she meant the 5 steps from systems are sexy or a lifesaver right now with big projects, because it breaks it down into small pieces. Okay, Sam, go ahead. Thanks for those comments.
Okay.
Guys.
The last piece I want to leave you with is to get to breakthrough is acknowledging what matters to you. So what your why is in the bigger picture. I'm sure a lot of us have the thought, I'm doing all these things, and at the end of the day, none of it matters to me. And that's an issue, because if at the end of the day, nothing of what you're doing matters to you and you can't tie it into your why or the bigger picture, then why are you doing it? You know, we only have one life to live. And at the Ops Boss Leadership Retreat last year, we had a speaker talk about his legacy backpack. Christy, do you want to give a little bit of what he was talking about there? I know this is off script, but I think you can explain it a little bit better than me.
So it was someone who had lost his wife during COVID, and he shared his story with us, and he shared about how he's actually carrying 2 legacy backpacks now, but he is now carrying on her legacy as a teacher and someone who changed lives, and he wants to continue that, but it made him think about his legacy, and that his legacy is to show the people around them that they're loved because now of his loss. So it's just the piece of, when I'm not here, what are
you leaving behind? Yeah. So that really got me thinking, is why am I here on earth? Why am I in real estate? Why am I passionate about the things I'm doing? And that brought me a lot of clarity. So the questions I would pose to you is, what is the meaning of what you do? How are you contributing to the greater universe through the role you are currently in or the company you work for? Because that's what life is all about, is to leave an impact on this earth and leave a legacy for what you've done so far. So what ties you into what you're doing now?
And then once you know that, your people will discover, I'm either in the right place or I'm not in the right place. We're not always in the right place where we're meant to be for that. And we could be in the right place and get more of it by doing different things. So as an example, when I was on my real estate team, it was very meaningful to be part of a real estate team. I never took for granted the fact that we have this beautiful opportunity to help people at the most important times of their lives, having babies and losing jobs or losing spouses. When people are moving, it's because of big deals in their lives. And so I was always very honored to be connected to that. And over time, as my team grew really large, I was less and less and less connected from the actual clients. And I realized that wasn't really every day. I didn't feel like it mattered what I was doing. And so I had to change what I was doing. But it may be that on your real estate team, if that's something that resonates with you, you're like, well, I need to actually make my transaction coordination job more connected to people. Maybe I want to change my system, so I talk to them more on the phone versus doing everything generically behind the scenes. And maybe that's a win-win, because you get more referrals because you're connecting more with people and you feel more connected and meaningful about your work. So it can take lots of different forms when you start to key into why you're doing what you're doing. Sarah asked great questions, which is, does anyone have any tools to identify a DOO's top 20%? I didn't see it. It's basically about identifying your top 20%.
Yep.
That's probably another whole conversation around, since we have all different roles here. Steph, what would you say with that?
Let me unmute. My cat is yelling downstairs because he's feeling neglected or something. I don't know. Anybody want a cat? I have 4 and I'm totally willing to box one up and ship them to you. I would say your top 20% depends on where you are and where you want to go, because it could be different. For some teams don't want to grow any, they're where they're at. And so their top 20% is refining their systems and making them perfect and being as efficient as they can. Some teams are wanting to grow big. And so your top 20% is growth and opportunity and big thinking and building things and tearing things down and rebuilding them. So you have to figure out where you are right now and where you want to go before you can ever decide what your top 20% is.
Yeah, and it's really hard to define when you say DOO, a DOO of a small team, a DOO of a large team, a DOO of an expansion team. one DOO might still be keeping listings or transaction coordination, and the other DOO has nothing to do with clients. So their 20% might be profit margin and
Or
profit dollars.
recruiting. I've seen them where they're recruiting,
Yeah,
they've got all
it's
these
kind of all
crazy.
over the place.
Yeah.
What I would do if you're trying to determine your 20% is just list everything out and then go through and ask, like if I have 10 things on there that I'm responsible for, what are the 2 things that have the most impact on the business, the success of the business and the growth of the business, and figure out. So if I'm a TC, if I'm an EA doing transaction coordination and listings and systems and marketing and all the things, my 20% is probably still transaction coordination if I'm a solo EA, right? So my 20% would be that. How I measure success would be reviews and referrals. If I'm a COO of a super large team, it's probably the P&L, because the P&L is going to measure our growth and our efficiency. So it's mine, for example, on my team, my number one thing was always focus on the bottom line, on profitability. So, but that's a whole conversation for another day, I think. Sam, do you want to give one more takeaway, and then I'm going to ask Stephanie if she'll role play for some of you guys, some conversations maybe.
That's actually all I had from the book. So you
Okay,
can go ahead and
perfect.
roll right
Thank
into
you
that.
so much. Highly
Yeah.
recommend the book, you guys. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I think a lot of people are dealing with it. So that if you have someone on your team dealing with that, there's another tool that you can share with them. So I asked Steph if she would think about what are some conversations. Maybe we can do one from I'm in overwhelm or burnout and I'm on a team and I'm a leader that I'm worried about someone on my team that might be in burnout. So if I am the person in burnout and I want to be proactive about getting out of burnout, I have so much on my plate, I'm getting things back on my plate. What does that conversation look like with my team owner?
Okay, so I'm the person now and I'm having that conversation.
Yeah,
You're the team owner?
I guess so. Yeah, I'll be the
Okay.
team, unless somebody else wants to be the team owner.
Sure. Hey, Christy, do you have a minute to chat?
Of course.
Okay. So I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I know, as you know, that like we have so many priorities on our plates right now. I'm sure you do, and I'm sure I do. I wanted to have a conversation so that you and I can get in alignment on what the priorities are so that we can reduce each other's stress and we can make sure we're pointed in the right direction.
Okay.
How are you feeling right now about like the workload for the whole team? Like, what's the most critical thing that we should be working on right now?
Well, everything. Like we just have to hey, I want you guys who are in burnout, those of you who raised your hand, feel free to jump in the chat and tell us what you're experiencing on the other end from team owner. Like, what are they responding?
Yeah.
Like, it's all hands on deck right now. We all just have to do what we have to do. It is a tough market.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And sales are probably the most important thing. So if I could share with you my list of priorities, could you maybe help me figure out which one comes first? I realize they all need to get done. I get it, but we only have so many hours a day, just like you couldn't take 10 appointments today. I realize that I can't get 10 things done. I can't finish 10 projects today. So if I sat down with you with my list of things in the priority order that I thought they should go, would you give me some feedback? And maybe
that would be awesome. I would love that. Let's do that.
Okay. So if I'll take 20 minutes or 2 days or whatever it is, I'll get all the priorities written down of everything on my plate. And then you and I can have a conversation about which ones to knock down first. Because the last thing I want to do is work on something that's not important to you.
I love that. So we can get on the same page. So we're going to proactively come to the team owner. Here's all the things. Here's what I think is most important. Now, what about stuff when you get down and you're like all the things that you're doing? Right. And Sarah, you are so my girl. There's going to be things that can't get done. What does that look like? Like if I already am in overwhelm, I'm now getting the job back. We have some clients who are now getting transaction coordination back, for example. What does that conversation look like? Because I don't want to look like I don't want to work hard.
Yeah. in my opinion, probably the best way to do it is to rank the stuff by critical has to get done. Like literally, if this doesn't get done, we're dead in the water. Would be nice to have done. This would help a lot if we could get it done, and not important. And let's rank those, because I'm guessing that and we need to look at everybody's tasks, because I'm guessing that there's people on the team that are working on some of the not important stuff because they don't know any different, because they were told to do it and they're doing it. So if it's all hands on deck, let's make sure it's all tasks are important that we're working on. Let's reprioritize everything we're doing and make sure that what everybody's working on is actually driving business and helping work towards the goal. And we're not doing these things that, like Sam said, she was just doing it because it had always been on her plate. She was just like, oh, well, that's her task. I've just done it because there's a lot of people on teams that aren't going to ask that question. Why? Why are we doing this? Is this making an impact? How important is it? And I'm guessing that we probably picked up a lot of fluff and a lot of nice to have stuff when the market was really great. And now that everything's coming back on our plate, the must do stuff, some of it's not getting done.
Yeah. And we shouldn't be working on the rest until the must do is done. So Sarah gave a good suggestion in there. And I'll add to that. So number one, a 411, if you're not with Keller Williams, is a KW tool. You can find it by Googling it online. It's a goal setting worksheet where you have your annual, your monthly, and your weekly. We call them the big rocks. Sarah said she does hers in red, yellow, and green regarding how important they are. I do a similar task in my CRM, my dashboard, where I have everything I have to do today. I use 3 numbers purposefully because they're extreme. 1 means I can't leave my seat in my office until it's done today. Like it has to be done today. 5 is it would be great to get it done today, but if I don't, I can bump it to tomorrow. And 9 is it'd be nice to do this, but if it doesn't get done, it doesn't get done. It's okay. So I know all I have to do today on those overwhelm days is I just have to do the ones. And I can only have 3. There's never more than 3 ones. That's just my personal rule, not to feel overwhelmed. Okay, so if I'm a leader and I notice somebody on my team is like Brittany said, maybe they're starting to make mistakes. They're not the kind of person that makes mistakes normally. What's that conversation stuff looking like? You had an operations team of 15. So if you noticed that with your people, what did that look like?
My first question was always, hey, what's on your mind? Always. And they would generally just spill the beans.
What if you have a high C person that's kind of private or they're newer on their team, so there's not as much trust there? How are you going to get that person to open up?
Yeah. Generally, how do you feel about the job right now? Right? How are you feeling about the workload? How are you feeling about the job? Tell me about a day when you felt amazing, like you left that day and thought, wow, that was the best day at work I ever had. Tell me about a day where you were like, that was like literally the worst day I've ever had. And usually if you can ask those questions and have them tell you about that, then you can kind of get a little bit of insight into how they're feeling. The day I had the best day, I came in, I knew exactly what I was supposed to do. I did all the tasks, I left, my checklist was done. I felt awesome. The day that was the worst, everything went wrong. Clients were out of control. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing, or I didn't have the information I needed to do my job, or I couldn't find what I was looking for. Those will give you insights if you can ask them to tell you about their best day and tell you about their worst day, into what makes them click. This is really good. This is really bad. And then you can get them to open up about other stuff. But I usually just start with tell me your story. Tell me stories. Tell me about when this.
Yeah. I think there's someone mentioned it earlier too. Thank you. That was good stuff. Our one-on-one meetings with our team members, if we're leaders on teams, are more important than ever, and making sure that we're not just talking about business goals. We should be talking about personal goals with everybody. And if you're doing them every single week, we should never get to the point where you are in extreme burnout on the team, because we're doing it consistently and making adjustments as we go. I think we could probably talk about this for 3 more hours, but I hope that was helpful for you guys. Brooke, if you want to drop the link in here for our events calendar coming up, Hannah's book Blink, it's only 15 minutes next month and it's free. On redeeming your time is another approach that might help you. Just a little small tool you can put in your toolkit for burnout and overwhelm. Sam and Stephanie, thank you guys very much. And I hope to see you guys in class, in group coaching, in one-on-one coaching, or at the retreat soon. And thanks for coming.